probably the most intense day from a physical standpoint of this whole experience in Israel and in the West Bank, Palestine, was in Hebron, which is home of the tomb of the Patriarchs. It's home of the patriarchs of all three major monotheistic faiths in that area: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So you have Abraham and Sarah and their descendants that feed into all three of these monotheistic religions. And so obviously this land, this city, this burial site is going to be sacred for all three religions, and will conjure up the most controversy and conflict and hostility, because to possess that area is to possess a sacred place in the story of their faith. And that has been exceedingly true in the story of Hebron. And at times, Jews specifically and Muslims lived in peace in this area. In fact, there was very little thought of living any other way, living side by side. It was when the conflicts began to build in the 48 war and the 67 war that there was a conscious us versus them kind of mentality that was bred. And so we went to Hebron, which even last year when I was there on a study tour, we weren't able to go there because of the tension. Originally, this is purely West Bank Palestinian land. There was a settlement, a Jewish-Israeli settlement, which is kind of the heartbeat of the controversy right now, of the expansion of these settlements into the West Bank, Israeli settlements into the West Bank. A settlement planted right in the center of Hebron, now 20% of the land there. And those settlers are some of the most obviously committed and aggressive, if not the aggressive, in all the land. And so there is this air of tension that exists as soon as we pull up. And so we go to the tombs of our forefathers, of all three faiths. We were able to meet with a local Jewish man who actually is a settler there in the area, and hear some of his story and the significance of this land, of having the seed of Adam and Eve and their forefathers being right here in this place, and the significance and sacredness of that. And now this burial ground has been broken into two churches, a mosque and a synagogue, or two sacred sites, Jewish and Muslim. And the security is off the charts. Just in recent history, there was a Jewish extremist that went into the mosque and opened fire with a machine gun, killing 29 Muslims and injuring 100. And that's the mosque that we went into. And standing there looking at the tombs of our patriarchs and of the story that they were bringing, and thinking of the mandate that God, Yahweh, gave Abraham to be good news to the world, to invite Abraham into this story and to say, will you be part of this redemptive restoration process? And then to think of these polarizing worlds standing next to each other, the Jewish synagogue and the Muslim mosque, and then we're as Christians in there. And between these two, you can see each other, but there's bulletproof glass and bars now dividing these two churches, or two sacred sites. And that tells the story of Hebron, of the tension that exists there. And we went in and we got to see this stuff and experience it, and we went out and we walked down Shuhada Street, which is in this Jewish settlement. And just one street over is arguably the most tense area of conflict in all of Israel and Palestine. It's where the Palestinian land and the edge of this Jewish-Israeli settlement stands. And on that street, there are daily conflicts. On the street that we walked, Shuhada, it was like a ghost town. I have a picture of it below. No one walked there anymore because of the violence that has transpired over and over. The Israeli Defense Force is on posts defending this Jewish settlement. And on the other side, we have the Palestinians in their marketplace, which has almost no tourists now because people don't go there. The violence is too great. And it's this sense of just sadness, of brokenness, of hearing that just earlier that day on the street next to us, a settler poured chlorine down a Palestinian boy's throat. And that is just the life that is being lived there. And the stories that we often don't hear. And so we walk through these streets and we hear these stories, and we meet with a rabbi that is the rabbi in this settlement. And he's toting a pistol on his side right next to his tassels that signify his adherence to his faith. And I just had this feeling of brokenness, that there's something that's been forgotten. In the midst of this fight for land, there has been a compromise of humanity, a compromise of dignity, of any sense of equality. And on either side, the violence has escalated. Stories in the past of Arab Palestinians massacring a small number of Jews in the same land. And now we see the Jews massacring the Palestinians. And there's this dance of violence that we pray and we plead can be transcended by something else, by a message of hope and peace. And as I mentioned in my last post, there are these mustard seeds of hope, of change. And we plead for those to happen. And we plead for God's kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. Because we know in Jesus the kingdom is now. And the change is now. And so walking through that is just that. Hopefully that gives a taste of some of the tension that exists there and the complexity of the situation.